Welcome, and thank you for joining me as I present the strategic issues likely to impact the Great Southern Academy of Sport, or GSAS, over the next 5 to 10 years. GSAS operates within the broader Australian sporting sector. However, our focus is specifically on high-performance junior athletes. Our mission is to provide holistic support to identify talented regional athletes and to support them in progressing along their sporting pathways. As a non-for-profit organisation, GSAS does not generate commercial revenue in the same way that other businesses do in the sporting sector. As a result, we are highly dependent on government funding to deliver our services, a factor that significantly shapes the way that we respond to both risk and opportunities in the sector. According to IBIS World, the Australian sports industry is currently in a growth phase, with profit, revenue and audience numbers on the rise. This is encouraging news for our athletes, as many of them aspire to reach professional or semi-professional levels. This growth suggests an environment of increasing opportunities, but it also brings new challenges and pressures that GSAS must strategically prepare for. This presentation will explore three key strategic issues that will significantly influence the Academy over the next decade. They are government policy and funding, digital transformation, and para-sport. The rising cost of living continues to place pressure on Australian households and businesses. As shown in the graph here, the Australian Bureau of Statistics 2025 living costs have increased across all household types, averaging 3.5% over the past year. Over the last 5 years, the cost of everyday essentials has risen by approximately 20%, significantly impacting the financial well-being of everyday Australians. What does this have to do with a non-for-profit? Well, Limital 2025 depicts that funding priorities are often politically responsive. In periods of economic constraint or election cycles, governments might redirect funds towards sectors with greater perceived urgency or public demand. GSAS receives the majority of its funding from a state government grant. This financial dependency creates vulnerability and a high-level risk for the organisation. It is first recommended that a dedicated board member create and be assigned the portfolio of partnerships and fundraising. This role does not currently exist and would involve leading the development of alternate revenue streams, working with key strategic partners, and providing oversight and direction in fundraising. Currently, revenue generation lacks structure and leaves the executive officer without clear guidance or strategy in trying to create more revenue for the business. The second recommendation is to formalise partnerships with state and national sporting bodies. State sports are given funding from the federal government in order to deliver programs to regional areas. The Academy could deliver these programs for the sports in exchange for financial contribution. This would not only create more revenue, but also strengthen the relationships between the sports and the Academy. The final recommendation is to expand community engagement by increasing the services offered to local schools, sporting clubs, community groups, and wellbeing organisations. This could look like deploying our athletes to Headspace, to Clontarf organisations, to high schools, to deliver workshops, to engage with struggling teens, working on mental health and body confidence and things like that, in exchange for either in-kind donations or venues or revenue. The next strategic issue facing the Academy will be digital transformation. Digital transformation and the introduction of AI into daily life has a huge impact on organisations around the world. A study done by Yang and Han 2024 depicts that digital transformation can have both positive and negative impacts on an organisation. 19% of non-for-profit organisations surveyed by the Australian Institute of Company of Directors reported a cyber breach in the last 12 months, a clear negative indicator of digital technology. However, the study also found that over 60% of the same organisations found benefits in productivity and customer satisfaction through the use of AI. The first recommendation is to inherit better governance and communication around digital technology through a formalised digital and privacy policy. Questions this policy could address might be, what specific technology do we agree on using in the organisation? Are we happy for AI to be used for communication, social media or policy writing? And how much of our athletes' data should we give our coaches access to? This will allow the organisation to move forward with clear direction and safety around digital technology. Having clear boundaries for digital tools for the executive officer will also reduce the principal agency cost by aligning organisational goals throughout. The second recommendation is to organise training or workshop for staff members to go through the available AI tools and programs that we could be using or could get benefit from. This will maximise the productivity of the organisation and potentially minimise costs and improve customer and community satisfaction. The final recommendation is to adopt DT to specifically reduce our environmental impact of the organisation. Whilst GSAS does not have a big environmental impact, every little bit counts. So this could include, but not be limited to, digitalising athlete and supplier contracts, conscious policy around events and when we visit regions for workshops about waste, and having more workshop and forums online to reduce travel and emissions. Final strategy to discuss is the social issue of diversity and inclusion, in particular reference to the Academy expanding to include parasport as a branch of its services. There is an increased want for organisations to demonstrate inclusiveness and diversity in products and practices. Parasport has seen notable expansion in recent years, with increases in athletic participation, sponsorship opportunities, and global audience engagement. In 2025, the Australian government has promised almost $55 million invested in Paralympic sport in lieu of the Brisbane 2032 Olympic Games. In addition to this, key stakeholder and partner, the West Australian Institute of Sport, or WAIS, has recently built a para unit in Perth. The key starting point for GSAS to expand to parasport is to build a relationship with the West Australian Institute of Sport, or WAIS, and its new para-athlete unit. WAIS is leading the way in high-performance parasport in the state, and aligning with their mission and frameworks will provide GSAS with a strong foundation to develop its own inclusive program. There may even be an opportunity for GSAS to access some of their federal grant funding to extend services to the region. It is very important that the organisation clearly has a parasport strategy as well, to outline the who, what, where, when and how of the program with clear goals and a timeline. There should also be a clear inclusivity policy that will minimise risk and increase project effectiveness. Finally, it is recommended that GSAS collaborates with community groups that are already established in inclusion, disability support and parasport. This involves actively engaging with schools, disability support services, rehabilitation centres and inclusive sporting clubs across the region. By building genuine long-term relationships with these groups, GSAS can create a more accessible entry point for people with disability. On analysing the external strategies facing the Academy in coming years, it is necessary to also assess my ability as a strategic leader. To analyse my leadership skill set, I have used the Schumacher, Grupp and Howland 2013 framework to identify and critique my leadership skills. The framework identifies 6 essential strategic leadership skills that a leader must have for success: anticipate, challenge, interpret, decide, align, and learn. Using this framework, I can identify 4 of my strengths. The anticipate. I demonstrate strong anticipation by actively engaging with the community, staying informed through industry news, attending conferences, and maintaining a forward-looking mindset. I stay curious to what is happening in the outside world and how it can affect our organisation. Decide. My decision-making is clear and inclusive. I thoughtfully weigh up all options, invite others to be involved in the process, and can justify my own choices with transparency and logic. Align. In terms of alignment, I excel at stakeholder management. My ability to build and maintain relationships has always been a strength. I can identify the values and needs of concerned groups, foster a collaborative team culture, and create shared value. Learn. I am also committed to learning, regularly seeking development opportunities, conducting post-decision reviews, and encouraging questions and feedback. I can also identify 2 areas of weakness. Challenge. I need to actively be challenged more. This includes challenging my own assumptions and those of others more rigorously. I'm developing greater patience in decision making and creating more space for opposing views and critical questioning. In younger years, I would have been identified as a people pleaser and avoided any confrontation. Whilst I have improved, I believe I need to view challenge as conflict as a place to learn and grow and not as an attack on my leadership capabilities. And finally, interpret. I aim to strengthen my interpretation skills by improving my ability to balance bigger picture thinking with more attention to detail. Learning about ESG application has really encouraged me to have greater enthusiasm for governance and view it as a powerful tool for success instead of a tedious job. With a greater focus on patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to embrace challenge, I believe I can lead this organisation through these strategic changes and see GSAS succeed through a changing environment in coming years. Thank you.